Somewhere there's crickets, how faint their tune. Somewhere there's heaven, how low the moon. Greetings and welcome back to Backyard Astronomy with Gemini Brett. It is 8:26 p.m. on Saturday, Saturn's Day, September 7th, 2024. And I'm recording from my backyard in Richmond, California. As promised, I would wait for it to get a bit darker before hitting record tonight, but I didn't want to wait for it to get too dark because I wanted you to be able to see Spica, who's over here on the very right of your frame, just about to set, and or at least even before then, will be consumed by the fog that is rolling in from the Pacific over San Francisco. How low the moon! So let's tune in with the lunar path, or at least first with the path of the sun. So you can see moon here is below this bright star, which, by the way, competes for the coolest star name. That is Zubenelgenubi. It competes with one of its siblings here, Zubenelgenubi and Zubenelgenubi. But Zubenelgenubi is right on the ecliptic plane. Spica is a little bit south of the ecliptic. So again, over here, kind of just at the tip of this fog, is Spica. So we're gonna run the ecliptic up this way and then right through Zubenelgenubi, and then just right south of Acrab there, and about 5 degrees north of Antares. Okay, well, let's get back to that. So there's a couple of reasons why moon is so low right now in northern hemisphere skies. One is lunar latitude, and two is she is moving through a low sign, a sign called Scorpio, which, consider, in the northern hemisphere hosts the sun during the midst of the fall, when sun is falling from its summer height, yes, and on its way to its winter depth. So when moon visits Scorpio in the northern hemisphere, moon is also low. Do you know what's lower? Sagittarius. And do you know what's just as low as Sagittarius? Capricorn. So as moon moves in this particular lunation, where moon met sun for new moon in the sign of Virgo, moon's moving from Virgo to Libra, to Scorpio, to Sagittarius, right? And then we'll find its greatest depth in northern hemisphere skies, its lowest altitude at culmination. We will witness it. We will not witness it from here. Why? Because of that tree. Okay, so we're gonna have to take a bit of a field trip. And since I have a 3-month-old baby, it might just be across the street. Maybe I'll get out of the house to one of my night sky spaces around where I live. It's a wonderful thing to track one lunation to the next, because you'll witness this. Sometimes the moon, Diana's bow, that sliver crescent in the sunset west, that evidence that she has survived her monthly fire trial. Sometimes from that point, moon will just blast off, seemingly towards the top of the sky. So much of this has to do where on earth you reside, but it really also has to do with the signs that host the moon's travel. Okay, well, new moon was in Virgo, and the full moon will be a lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces this month. And that helps me know that for full moon, sun will still be in Virgo, and therefore sun will be in Virgo when the moon is at the waxing half, the opening square of the cycle as well. What is square Virgo? And the answer is Sagittarius, right? Well, where is that going to go down? Somewhere in the Scorpion. Okay, because very importantly, signs and constellations are very different things. If you favor an equal sign zodiac, the constellations on the sun's path, the constellations which embrace the ecliptic plane, and therefore host the travel of the sun. And for the most part, since our solar system is relatively flat, host the travel of the other moving stars, the planetas, as well. Where were we? I'm sure I was trying to make a point. Anyway, what's the point? Right, so we're just going to have to move on to the next because, I don't know, I guess I saw a ghost and my mind escaped me. So in this particular lunation, from a northern hemisphere point of view, the first half of the lunation will feature the moon moving through consecutively lower and lower signs, right? Starting in Virgo, coming through Libra, now into tropical Scorpio. Right, that's where I was. That signs and constellations are not the same things. The constellations that embrace the ecliptic plane, the constellations of the zodiac, vary significantly in size. So if you favor a zodiac with equal signs, whether it's star-based, a sidereal equal sign zodiac, or the Earth zodiac, which is the tropical zodiac, as I do, then it cannot map the constellations. And the truth is, if you favor the tropical zodiac, and I'll show you more about what that is as we move through this waxing half of the month together on this follow the moon journey, then the signs and the constellations are not only not the same thing, but they are completely off from what they used to be, or they're more, I should say, like one sign off. So for example, Spica, the star you can just barely still see above the fog here, the astronomers call Alpha Virgo, the bright star of the Virgo constellation, but I prefer to use the term priestess for that constellation. Spica's kind of popping through again right there, okay? Because this is what I was taught by my first teacher, Daniel Gemario, to use words like priestess, scales, and scorpion for constellations, and words like Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius for signs. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking in tropical zodiac degrees. For example, Zubenelgenubi, typically drawn these days as the fulcrum of the scales, which are drawn in many ways, but many do it like this. So this is like the frame of the scales, from Zubenelgenubi through Zubenelgenubi to Brachium, and then the balances like hang down towards the scorpion. Now, there was a time in Greece where these stars were known as not the scales, but the claws. That they are the scales and have ancient recognition as the scales clearly suggests the time when these stars hosted the equinox degree, which is a point where the ecliptic, the plane of the year, and the equator, the plane of the day, intersect. The equator is no longer there. It is in priestess space. We didn't really get to play with it in this particular lunation because by the time we could see the moon, she was already pretty close to Spica, which is at 24 tropical Libra, right? The equinox stars closer to the priestess head, stars like Zavi Java and Zanaya, they are now under the beams of the sun. The sun has claimed them from the sunset west, and later they will be reborn as morning stars, but right now they cannot be seen either in the evening or in the morning because the sun is traveling through that zone of the zodiac and therefore blinding us to them. Perhaps later in this quest we will tune, however, into the Aries equinox point, which is currently aligned with the ringlet of the fish's head, the head of the western fish. So let's swim that stream when we get to it. Okay, for now, I'll just say that Zubenelgenubi and Zubenelgenubi mean respectively the southern and the northern claw. Like it was once seen that those were the claws of the scorpion. There was another time where the scorpion was shown holding the scales. But these days we know this as the frame of the scales. Okay, and Zubenelgenubi not only has a wonderful name, but it is also such an important star because in our day and age, that star, so close to the ecliptic plane, which does this, okay, the path of the sun, and for the most part that of the planets for our solar system is relatively flat. That star is right on the ecliptic plane. It's like a half a degree away. And in our day and age, it marks the center point of a sign, the tropical sign of Scorpio. So this is 15 degrees tropical Scorpio. And by the way, that's the center point of a season, if you consider the zodiac in that kind of fourness, right? Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius being the signs that host the sun during, of course, northern hemisphere fall and southern hemisphere spring, right? So right in between the Libra equinox point and the Capricorn solstice point, we have 15 degrees tropical Scorpio, which is currently hosting this beautiful star. Or maybe we should see that in the other way around. The signs precess through the stars, or the stars process through the degrees of the tropical signs. And again, in our day and age, and it's such a powerful and beautiful star to get to know, Zubenelgenubi, 15 degrees tropical Scorpio, and right on the ecliptic plane. Now, why then is Moon so far away? Because while our solar system is relatively flat, all the planets have their own path, and Moon is no stranger to this truth. Every month, Moon snakes above and below the ecliptic, above and below the heart of the zodiac, above and below the sun's path. It is the sun's path that heads here through Zubenelgenubi, but the moon is currently south of the sun's path, which in northern hemisphere skies, like here in California, means low. Lower than what sun would be in these degrees. Kind of lower than I would expect, actually, because moon's south node, where the moon snakes across the ecliptic path heading south, is in tropical Libra right now. And so even here in Scorpio, I can see that the moon is so far south of the ecliptic. And this is a beautiful thing about learning the ecliptic stars, right? Learning the path of the sun. You can see when the moon is above or below it. To speak more globally, north or south. Because in southern hemisphere skies, southern latitude like this, it's the moon south of the sun's path, would be higher than the sun in those particular degrees. Where in the northern hemisphere sky, north means higher, south means lower. Okay, so I can just use my hand here and I can see that moon. Let's see if I can get this on the screen. Now it's not at arm's length, so it's not working, but I can fit those 3 fingers between moon and Zubenelgenubi. So I can see that moon is like 5 degrees away from Zubenelgenubi. However, the trick is to do my best to see where Zubenelgenubi intersects the ecliptic, and the answer would be kind of like this, okay? So moon has not yet reached the Zubenelgenubi degrees, 15 tropical Scorpio. Moon, just using my hand to measure the sky, I would approximate is currently at 12 degrees tropical Scorpio. Let me cast a chart and find out how true that is. It is now 8:40 p.m. on September 7th, 2024, Richmond, California, and I find the moon at 11 degrees and 2 minutes tropical Scorpio. So I was off by 1 degree. Now, I'm not ashamed. Maybe a little bit, I'm working on it. It would be much easier to measure the distance between moon and Zubenelgenubi if moon's node was currently in Scorpio and near that star, so that moon would be here, right? Because now I have to like project the moon's position up to the ecliptic plane and then measure from that point to Zubenelgenubi, which I know is currently at 15 degrees tropical Scorpio, marking that cross quarter point between the Libra equinox and the Capricorn solstice. Okay, so how low the moon? Why? For two reasons. She is moving through fall signs for the northern hemisphere, which is where I am gazing from, and the fall signs are low. So when I say the fall signs, of course, the moon moving through Scorpio does not make it autumn, right? It is, of course, only when the sun moves through Scorpio and Sagittarius where we are in autumn times, but that is autumn times because they are low, right? And so when the sun visits them, the sun is low. When the moon visits them, the moon is low. And the moon has this great trick of being able to get even lower than the sun. It depends upon where her nodes currently live. The nodes themselves have an 18.6 year retrograde course around the zodiac, and right now the south node of the moon is at 642 tropical Libra. So when moon crossed that point, which kind of began our journey a few days ago with Diana's bow, though we could not see any stars because of the beams of the sun, the moon would have been right on the ecliptic path, and since then the moon has gone south of the path, and she will continue south and further south until she is square the nodes. So right now the south node at 7 Libra, so when moon gets to 7 Capricorn, the moon will be at what we call her southern bending, and I'll save the rest of this wrap for then, where I will attempt to explain to you what it means for the moon to be out of bounds. Okay. For now, let's just look ahead to where moon will go next. She will, of course, wax away from the sun and head from the west to the east, okay? The daily motion is east to west. Like the moon is going to come set in the southwest, and then the Scorpion will set, and then the Archer. Okay, but the zodiacal motion, the orbital motion, when planets are direct, as moon and sun always are, is from the west to the east, right? So Priestess just set, here's the scales, here's the Scorpion. If we continue, we see the constellation called Tree. Okay, well, the Archer is kind of hiding behind the tree right now. These are some stars of the Archer. And then these are the horns of the goat. I'm just seeing the batteries running out, so let me just show you before it does. The Scorpion, right, moon will pass through the scales and then head to the Scorpion. And if she was on the ecliptic plane like this, okay, south of Acrab and north of Antares, but she's not. She's actually well below the ecliptic plane, so it's going to be interesting to see where moon journeys in respect to the path of the sun. I look forward to showing that to you as we move forward in this 2-week exploration where we follow the moon. Thanks for spending some time in the backyard astronomy with me. This is your friendly astronaut Gemini Brett signing off. See you in space, friends.